When Princess Alira looked down at the human in chains and said, "Only human," the entire throne hall laughed with her. Because in an empire built on bloodlines, fire rites, and the worship of superior species, humanity was a joke that had somehow learned to build warships. Captain Elias Vorn stood at the edge of the ceremonial trench with his wrists bound in ion steel, his face bruised, his uniform half burned from capture. And across from him the princess shone in white metal silk beneath a crown of runes. Behind her rose the black steps of the solar throne. Beneath her feet burned the sacred imperial fire, a blue furnace hot enough to eat armor, flesh, and bone. No condemned being had ever crossed it. That was the point. It was theater. The kind that taught subjects to kneel before the body hit the floor. "You destroyed our tribute convoy." Alira said, "You armed miners, burned foundries, and turned laborers into insurgents. All for what?" Elias lifted his head and answered with a voice scraped raw by smoke and pain. "For people you never bothered to count, for names your empire buried under quotas, for the right to breathe without asking permission." That answer offended the court, because courage from the weak always felt like insult to the powerful. Alira stepped closer to the trench and gave him an amused smile. "Dramatic words," she said, "but still, only human." Then the music stopped, and even the fire seemed to listen. With a flick of her fingers, the ion cuffs released and clattered to the floor. The sentence was obvious: cross the fire and live, or refuse and die beneath imperial blades. The nobles leaned forward to watch the human fail. The guards tightened their grip on shock spears, and Elias stared into the trench as blue light climbed his face. The heat rolled off it in waves, and for one honest second he looked afraid, because he was human, and humans understood pain very well. Alira saw that fear and mistook it for weakness, as the Empire always had. She had been taught that stronger species were born for dominion, that lesser species survived by obedience. Yet here stood a man who had torn apart 3 sectors of imperial industry with dock workers, smugglers and miners. Elias closed his eyes, not to surrender, but to remember Earth rain on old glass, machine oil in underground shafts, a child on Cinder Moon 7 asking if the Empire could take their son too. And the answer he had given her came back hard and clear. "Not while we are here." When he opened his eyes again, something inside him had settled. Not fear disappearing, but fear finding its place. Humans did not win because they felt nothing. They won because they learned to move while feeling everything. Alira watched him draw a slow breath, and for the first time unease touched her, because the human was no longer looking at the fire like a victim. He was looking at it like a price. Some men beg when the impossible stands in front of them. Some men step anyway. Elias walked. The first contact was brutal. Flame wrapped around his legs and climbed his body in a burst of blue-white light. Several nobles recoiled, and Elias nearly collapsed on the first step. But nearly was not enough. He drove himself forward, one step, then another. Every nerve in his body screaming to stop, yet he kept moving, because humans were not the strongest creatures in the galaxy. Not the fastest, not the oldest, not the most refined. But they possessed a quality the Empire had never understood. They could continue after the moment that should have ended them. They could carry purpose into pain beyond logic. Alira's expression shifted. Amusement vanished. Surprise took its place, then disbelief. Because the human was still walking, skin blistering, sleeves burning away, silhouette shaking inside the sacred fire. Yet still walking, and with every step he took, something invisible cracked across the hall. Certainty. At the center of the trench, Elias reached toward a dark obelisk beside the flame channel, control node dismissed as unreachable. He slammed his burned palm against it. Blood streaked across alien glyphs, and the nanites buried beneath his skin awakened. The signal shot upward through the palace core, through defense grids, through encrypted fleet channels, and above Valadin Prime, the silent human corvette hanging like debris suddenly came alive. Engines flared, stealth fields collapsed, and behind it a rebel strike group dropped out of concealment like predators from deep water. Alarms exploded through the throne hall. The crystal dome darkened under descending ships. Guards shouted, nobles ran. The Empire's ceremony shattered in a heartbeat. And Elias reached the far side of the trench and dropped to one knee. Burned, shaking, alive, he had not crossed the fire to survive. He had crossed it to open the sky. The palace trembled as the first explosion struck the defense towers outside. Red warning sigils washed across the walls, and Princess Elira stood motionless at the trench, staring at the man she had sentenced. Because the thing before her was no longer small, no longer dismissible. She saw, all at once, what they had failed to understand about humanity. Their softness was not fragility, it was attachment. Their short lives were not weakness, they were urgency. Their pain did not teach surrender, it taught endurance. And that made them dangerous in ways older species never anticipated. They loved fiercely because they did not have forever. They fought savagely because too many things could be taken too quickly. And when pushed to the wall, they asked only what remained worth protecting. Elias lifted his head, his face lit by the fire behind him and the battle blooming above the dome. And when he spoke, his voice was ruined but steady. "You called me only human," he said. Then he rose. Trembling, impossible, and outside the rebel fleet ripped open the imperial sky. Inside the throne hall, even the guards stepped back. Because everyone there understood the same truth at the same time. If one human could turn an execution into an invasion, if one wounded officer could walk through sacred fire and keep going, then the Empire had not captured a lesser species. It had provoked one. And in the silence before the next shockwave hit, Princess Elira finally saw what the court had missed from the beginning. The smallest creature in the room had been the one who believed humanity had limits.